going to tell you what my topic is because I'm afraid you'll leave. Right. But I want to start out by saying that in my world, in my head, in the way I've made sense of my own journey, spirituality has two main purposes. The first purpose is to have a direct experience of God, the divine, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it. Another name for that is numinous, to have a numinous experience. Perhaps you've had a peek or a glimpse of that in your meditation practice. Oftentimes, very conscious sacred sexuality gives us a glance at that. Ecstatic dance gives us a glance at that. There are many, many ways to find and experience the numinous. The second purpose of spirituality, to me, falls under the heading of what I call spiritual maturity. And it is the way that you have a numinous experience is you practice. You practice meditation, you practice ecstatic dance, you practice tantric sex, you practice whatever it is. And then you eventually with practice you open and align yourself and are able to have that numinous experience. The second purpose of spirituality, this thing I'm calling spiritual maturity, is well, what that is that we, regardless of whether we go to a spiritual community or church, regardless of whether we actually believe in God or the divine, none of those things actually matter to have spiritual maturity, because that's the way that we move and speak and act and influence the world, right? So it's the thing that last month I called it's the socks and shoes that we put on to go out into our daily lives. And there's a beautiful description of what I would call spiritual maturity that I have a friend. Her name is Cindy Wigglesworth, and she has spent a good decade or more doing research into spiritual intelligence. And so I'm going to give you Cindy's definition of spiritual intelligence, and we'll call that spiritual maturity as well. Cindy says that spiritual intelligence is the ability to behave with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner and outer peace regardless of the situation. The ability to behave with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner and outer peace regardless of the situation. No problem. We can probably learn that tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. The way that we get to that place is practice too, but the practice of that is a little bit different, right? Because when we do a practice so that we prepare ourselves to experience the presence of the divine, it is oftentimes a solo practice or a practice in groups, but it is typically an inward practice. The process of spiritually maturing involves the reality that we must come into contact with other people and brush up against them in order to have our own rough edges rubbed off, in order to be polished, let's say. Because Cindy says that it's the ability to behave a certain way, not to think a certain thought or have a certain consciousness. That we have to actually behave a certain way, and that way comes with inner and outer peace, regardless of the situation. So now I'm going to kind of step over here and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own journey around a particular thing that I'm still not naming, you notice. I came into New Thought 13 or 14 years ago, and it was the year after 9/11, and I heard the woman who became my first teacher in New Thought say, how can we expect people across the world that have been killing each other for generations to make peace if we can't make peace in our own lives? And it was like the sky opened up. And it was like God was shouting at me at that moment, and I got it. But the thing is, I'm not inherently a peaceful person. I mean, I am an expression of the divine. These people that have known me for a long time, Candace, are laughing at me right now. So I'm not. I'm hot-tempered. I'm kind of a mess in that sense. Now, my original state, because I'm aligned with the only power and presence there is, God, the seed of peace, the seed of harmony, the seed of all those things are in me. But there's several layers between it and the person that you see here. And so some of those layers like to fight. And so a great deal of my journey has been finding a way to be me without trying not to be me, right? Because I'm a fighter, I am. But it's about sort of putting things into new places so that I can use those qualities and they don't use me, and so that I am a sort of an ambassador for good in the world as opposed to not good. Not good. And so, because of that realization and because of the way that I am, I spent a lot of my time in ministerial school studying conflict. Conflict. So that's what I want to talk about. And it was a really hard talk for me to write today because conflict is one of those things I know so much about that I wanted to tell you everything in 20 minutes. And you could get an entire degree in conflict resolution, mitigation, all kinds of stuff. But I want to talk about conflict, and I want to do two things. I'm hoping to do two things. I'm hoping to reframe that word and the experience of it so that it's not a bad thing anymore. And the second thing I'm wanting to do is help you understand what's so spiritual about this. And if I accomplish either or both of those for at least one person, then I think this will have been a worthy endeavor today. So conflict, what comes up for y'all with that word? Conflict. Struggle. Anger. Disapproval. Disagreement. Say again? Loud.
Run away from it.
Avoidance. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Right. How many of you are conflict avoidant? All right. Not great associations with that word. Rodney's back there. Rodney's back there. I just wanted y'all to know that. We like to keep an eye on where Rodney is. It's a little bit like it's like Where's Waldo? Y'all know that game? Where's Rodney? All right. So I'm going to read you a couple quotes from Cindy Wigglesworth. Personal and spiritual growth can no longer be viewed as a private journey we undertake in a different sphere of life. That's all we talk about here at HeartSpace. It's not about Sunday morning. It's about how can you go out into your world. You can't afford to look at spirituality and the whole of life as separate things. We are all leaders and role models regardless of our jobs. We are leaders to our children, to our co-workers, and to everyone we interact with. Deep, authentic leadership requires that we lead ourselves first. In order for us to lead ourselves and be that kind of beneficial presence where we go in the world, in our families, in our workplaces, teams we participate on, boards we sit on, we have to know that people are inherently different, right? And it's sort of amazing that we get along at all, if you want to know the truth. It really is. And so when Bert and I, this never happens, but theoretically, if Bert and I were having a conversation and he saw it one way, and I saw it another way, what's that called? It's called conflict. It's called conflict. So let me give you a definition of conflict. Conflict is an interference pattern of energies. Okay, so shoreline and waves, two notes played on a keyboard that don't fit together, that makes you go like that, conflict. That's all it is. That's it. So I might have one set of values, you might have another. I might have one idea about how to solve a problem, you might have another. Right? And we are living and moving and having our being within the manifest body of an infinite presence. We're having infinite experiences. We really are. And so when we come to the table with each other, we are going to see things differently. We absolutely are. It's unavoidable. Not only is it unavoidable, it's beneficial. Why is that? I'm going to read you this quote. We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't. Right? Y'all ever had a boss that had a yes man? Right? How beneficial was the boss that had the yes man? Oh, you're right, you're right. You're right, you're right. You know, sometimes we have deep connections with people and we share a very similar worldview. We agree on a lot of things. And we do find comfort there. Yeah, we find comfort with like-mindedness, but we are stretched by conflict or disagreement or differing perspectives, whatever you want to call that. Those are the things that stretch us. The thing about it is that we have this idea that conflict is bad because by the time we're talking about conflict, it's usually something that's loud, sometimes violent, frustrating. It's all of the associations with it are the aspects of it that show up when we haven't dealt with it. When we haven't dealt with it. So there's a constructive way and a destructive way. Conflict is inherently destructive when we leave it unresolved, when we avoid it. Now, how many of you are conflict avoidant? Again, just chickens, right? So here's the thing about that. We think there's this confusion that to be peaceful or have peace or have harmony means that we don't have conflict. And it's not true. But we sometimes think it's true. And then we have like experiences that color the way that we show up. Childhood experiences, the way that we saw conflict dealt with. Ideas from our spiritual tradition, our cradle tradition that said conflict is this or that. We have all these ideas, and so that's what we bring to the table. And let me tell you what that looks like when you have a group of people. What it looks like is a conflict emerges in the room, and it's always going to emerge in the room, right? And then you look, as a facilitator, you look around the room, and there are people leaning in, some of them, a few of them, like just itching to get in the game. They are not conflict avoidant, those people. Doesn't mean they're healthy about it or constructive, just means they're not conflict avoidant. Then you have people that are like this. They're like a 4-year-old rocking in the corner, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And it's funny, except for that if you want to tell a story about that, that probably was a 4-year-old who sat in the corner who was overwhelmed by the way that people were attempting to deal or not deal with disagreements. Right? And then So you can look around the room as a facilitator and you can see all of the varieties of this. And there's the guy that's like, okay, hang on, we're getting a little excited. Can everybody just calm down? I mean, surely there's a compromise, right? The peacemaker, we got a peacemaker in the room most of the time. So you see, what you end up seeing is the full life experience of a person that they're actually bringing to their adult situation that has nothing to do with adulthood often. The truth is that the strongest group is the most different. The strongest group is the most different. The person in the room who sees things the most differently from everybody else is the most valuable in terms of coming to bringing forth viable solutions. Why? Because the more we're forced out of our own pair of glasses and into the seat or the glasses or the shoes of other people, the fuller our view becomes, the more we're stretched into the next level of growth. In order to do that, we can't withhold ourselves. But that's what all of this peacemaking, avoidance, dissociative behaviors, rocking in, all of that's fighting, all of that stuff is leaning in, leaning out, and it's not productive. See, conflict really can only be useful when it's dealt with constructively, and there's no such thing as conflict avoidance, because conflict carries an energy with it, right? And it's the energy of bumping up against something else that's different. That's it. That's all it is. Interfering energy patterns, right? So when we avoid conflict a lot of the time, we think we're being peaceful, but actually we're just transferring the conflict from here to here. Right? So I'm not going to say anything to that Jack A-double-S. I'm not going to say anything to that guy. But I'm seated. It's all like I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful, I'm peaceful. And we're torn up. Or we walk away from the thing that we didn't address and then we go gossip. Or we're so mad we go eat half a gallon of ice cream. You see, the conflict didn't go anywhere. The energy's still there. It's just feeding on us now. That's what avoidance does. It slowly but surely eats away. And it's eating away externally or internally. So we can't actually get away from it. What we have to do is step into it, be present for it, and do our work around it. And this is where it gets inherently, I think, spiritual. I think conflict is a very spiritual idea. Let me read you this, if I can find it. The definition, part of the definition for the word harmony in the textbook, the Science of Mind textbook, which is the book, our go-to book, is this: in tune with infinite order, contacting infinite intelligence, recognizing the Father within, accepting the underlying laws of creation, and moving in its mighty rhythm. One of the dictionary definitions of harmony is an orderly or pleasing combination of elements in a whole. So there's a reason that I say that, because like when I think of harmony, I think of Candace and Robin and Ocean Femi up here singing, and it's these voices that come together, and they are pleasing. They are relating to each other in a way that produces something beautiful and emotional. It'd be boring if they all sounded the same. And it'd be awful if one of the three of them didn't know how to harmonize. Right? Well, harmony is an inherent quality of God. At least we say it is. Peace is an inherent quality of the divine. At least we say it is. When we go out into the world and engage in situations that knock us off our peace horse or our harmony horse, those are the times that we have to pick up our spiritual tools and the tools that are available to us that may not be actually spiritual, maybe they're emotional, and get into the place where we can actually benefit from disagreements, differences in perspective, where we can actually construct a new version of ourselves. When we're able to do that, what we are able to do is, so conflict is constructive when we don't avoid it, when we stay in the game. Like you stay in the game. You stay in the room, you stay with the feeling. And it helps us to begin to question our own assumptions. And anything that causes us to question our own assumptions stretches us into a new perspective. So if we're going to walk around in the world saying that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we're going to walk around in the world saying that we believe in unity. In other words, there is no other. When I look upon the face of Oné, what I see is God. When I look upon the face of Tracy, what I see is God. Right? That is an all or nothing proposition. Either everyone in here, when I look at you, I'm looking upon the face of God, or I'm not. There's no exception. I can't go out and the first guy that cuts me off in traffic, he can't be the one exception to the unity of God. Can he? No, because the whole thing falls apart. Then I'd be mad. You see, that's my default. No, we can't do that. So when we're able to go into the world and not see, what conflict does sometimes, y'all, is it makes enemies. It makes an other. When you don't deal with it, it makes an other. Like the guy who's so different from you that his motives are questionable, or he's I don't know, he's just somehow the other. Right? Because we do that. When we start telling stories about things that we avoid, ultimately the story is, well, that guy that made me mad, or the guy that I'm in conflict with, he has nothing to do with me. He's some other guy. Like, he's the exception. What if we could see anybody that we came into conflict with, remember, two energy patterns, the place at which they touch. I keep saying that about conflict. Two energy patterns, the place at which they touch. We call that conflict. What if we could see the person we're in conflict with, or the idea we're in conflict, or the organization we're in conflict with? What if we could see that person as a gift bearer? You're all like, right. What if we could see that person? What if we could encounter them in a way that's undefended? And what if we could see them as bearing the gift of growth? That's the spiritual ideal. That's where I want us to get to. Because if we want to actually go out and make this a world that works for everyone, we're going to have to go out and encounter people who are different from us. They might be a little bit different, they might be vastly different. And when we do that, That's conflict. And what we do with it when we have it makes all the difference in the world. Because either we're going to go out and be successful creating a world that works for everyone, or we're going to retreat back into our own world and make it work solely for us. And that's not what we're about. We're about a world that works for everyone and a life that works for each of us. All right, so let me just a little survey here. Have I succeeded in perhaps cracking the door to a different idea about this for you? Have I successfully drawn a parallel between the necessity for our ability to be in conflict and to go out and act in a spiritual manner in the world?
Yes.
Okay. That's good, because that's really all I can do today. But I do want to tell you this. So let me back up and tell you another thing. Sometimes I get my topics because anybody that's a practitioner in this room or anybody that does spiritual counseling of any kind can tell you that sometimes people come to you and you start to see patterns. It's like, well, everybody's coming for prayer for this, and they have been for a month. Or everybody's coming for they want abundance prayer. You know, there's like patterns, trends. The last 3 months, people have come for prayer for conflict around relationships, work. It's pervasive in the people with the people that I talk to right now. So that tells me there's like this thing floating through the world, and maybe it's a good idea to talk about it. I also realize that there's very little that I can do when I talk to you about it other than the reframe and the tie-in. But I do want to let you know, before we close and pray, that I'm going to be doing a 6-week class on conscious conflict, starting, I think it's starting at the end of October, right? And it will go deeper into how to deal with conflict, developing some tools, creating peace within ourselves before we walk out into the world. And it is, if you are in a job where you work with people on a regular basis, I highly recommend it. If you manage or lead people, I highly recommend it. And yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that. I think we're going to go ahead and pray. We say there's one life. We say that life is God's life. We say that life is everywhere expressing. We say that life is in all things, in all situations, in all people. We say that we are in that life and that it is breathing us. It is moving us. One life, God's life, my life right now, the life of everyone here, and this must be true of everywhere and everything, no matter if we see it or not. What I know about the precious opportunity of her human birth is that we are here to show up and grow up as the divine. We are here to look upon the face and life of God and to make it welcome, to appreciate it, to glorify it, to be in awe of it. So while it's true that on one level, conflict is simply two interfering energy patterns, it is is also true that behind and before, beyond, between, anything that looks like conflict, there is this deep unity, this deep peace, and a big God. And so I'm called to remember that I have one foot in the divine, in the absolute, and one foot in this human experience. And upon these feet I stand every day. And I walk every day. And so I claim for myself and I claim for everyone here, and I affirm this for all life everywhere. That we were together in the beginning, we'll be together in the end, and in an absolute sense. We are together, we are one, right here, right now.